Done. So here, basically, we already know some syntaxes. We know that Java is a OOPS based language. Nothing can be written outside of the class. So these are some of the points what we have already discussed. And you all are familiar with how to create a class. So the general syntax, of course, what we are going to be doing is our access specifier, class and class name. So class name, this is for my creating my class. Okay, now next step is what are the things that is going to be there inside the class. Obviously inside the class, everything whatever you write in a Java program is supposed to be placed inside the class, other than our import statements. What is going to be outside the class is our package statements. So package statements is going to be outside the class, and of course our import statements. So these are the only two things that is going to be placed outside of the class. So any other code that you're going to be writing is always going to be embedded within the class. So far programs what we have written, we always had only one thing inside the class, that is our main function. And we used to write the main function as public static void main, and of course string args. So remember, args is just a variable name. You can use anything in place of this args. I can also write it as x, I can write it as z, anything. It is just simply a variable name what we are using here. And of course, what we used to write, we used to write the statements or the code inside of our main. So far, this is how we have been writing our programs. So now, along with this, we are going to be adding some new features. So what are the new things that we are going to be adding is, first one is we are going to be creating objects of a class. So now the question is, why is an object required? What is the necessary for creating an object? So far, you have been doing your Java programs. We never created any objects. We had our main function. Inside the main function, you were writing the code. You were running the program. Program was running absolutely fine. So what is the necessary now for an object? Okay, let me say this first thing. Now, I want to design a class called as student. The name of the class is student. So what is the student class going to be doing? The student class is going to fetch the information of my students. It's going to collect the information of the students. So it is going to have some things like student name, student ID, okay, student mobile number, student email ID, okay, which class they are studying in, okay, and what is their rank or marks, what is their average. So like this, what is their gender, what is the age of the student, what is the address of the student. So like this, various informations. I'm not talking only about this. Like this, various informations I'm going to be collecting about the student or about the students. Not one student. I'm going to collect this about all the students of my class. I want to collect this information regarding all the students of my class. Then I'm planning to conduct some exams. Okay, I'm going to be conducting some exam. Let us say an online exam. So in this exam, I want to maintain the marks of all the students. Okay, how much they have secured, how much marks they have secured in the exam. Then I would like to find the class average. So what is the class average? Who is the individual topper? So top 3 students. So like this, I want all this data to be taken. I want to write a program for this. This is my requirement. Now, please understand one thing. In my class, there may be multiple students. So, for multiple students, I need to maintain this. I need to maintain all these details for multiple students, not one single student, but for multiple students. So let us take for this class itself. So currently there are around 30 people attending my class. So I want the information of 30 people. How am I supposed to create a program for this? One way, create 30 variables. 30 variables. So imagine 30 names, 30 student ID, 30 mobile number, 30 email ID. So for each and every data, I want to create 30 variables because there are totally 30 students in my class. So I want all these data for each and every student. So imagine how your program is going to be going. So that is not the feasible way. And how to maintain all that data? That is another headache. So how are we going to customize this? What is the options we are having here? That is the reason why you are going to go for the concept of objects. So we already know what is an object. An object is a physical representation of a class. So whatever data you are going to store inside or whatever your class is having, how to make use of that is with the help of an object. So here, each and every student is going to be one object. So I don't have to create 30 variable names, 30 student ID, 30 mobile number. No, I will create only one variables, one of each. I will be creating 30 objects. I will be creating 30 objects. That is what my object is. So object, every object represents one individual data. Please remember, every object of a class is an individual representation of data. One object you're going to modify does not affect the other object. So what are the things is there about the object? A class. A class can have n number of objects. A class can have any number of objects. There is no restriction that I should have only this much. No restrictions at all. And what exactly is the use of this object? The use of an object is they are the physical representation of a class members. That is, a class is going to contain variables. A class is going to contain methods or functions. Okay, methods and functions both are same. So inside a class, these things are going to be there. How to make use of these things is with the help of my object. So that is the reason we are going to call the object as the physical representation of a class. And another important point is each object is an individual entity. Each object is an individual entity. So any changes that you're going to do to one object will not affect the other. So any changes that is done to an object does not affect the other object of the same class. Okay, is not going to affect the other object of the same class. Now, coming to the syntax, how am I supposed to create an object? Because so far what I have done, I have only the class, I have created class, I have created main function. I have never created any objects. So how am I supposed to create an object? So the syntax for creating an object is, first you have to mention the class name. First, we have to mention the class name. For which class are we planning to create that object? That class name is the first thing you have to mention. So I'm going to create an object for a class called test. So I have to mention the class name here. So class name, then followed by the name of the object. So for the object, you're supposed to be giving a name. So first, class name, then followed by the object name. Again, object name is an identifier. So please remember, object name is an identifier. I hope you remember what is an identifier. So an identifier is nothing but a programmer given name. We studied in our starting session what is an identifier and what are the rules you have to follow whenever you're going to be giving that name. So make sure that you're following all the rules when you're defining an object name. Okay, next thing is equals to our assignment operator equals to new. Now, what is this new? New is a keyword. So please remember, new is a keyword and one of the most important keyword. Why? Because it allocates memory for my object. What is the role of this new keyword is it is used to allocate the memory for my object. See, object is also like our variable. It is also used for storage. It is going to contain all the information. See, I said each and every object is a separate entity. So if I want to store the student details, then student name, mobile number, email ID, all the information needs to be stored inside the object. Then surely the object must have some memory space. Otherwise, how is it going to store all the data? So that is why object also needs memory. So who allocates the memory for the object? This new. This new is a keyword that is responsible for the object's memory allocation. Right. So class name, object name equals to new. Then repeat the same class name again here. Repeat the same class name followed by the open and close parenthesis and a semicolon. Now, what is this? This part is what we call as a constructor. This part is called as a constructor, which we shall be dealing with in our upcoming classes. So right now, just remember this is the syntax you have to follow. How to use it and other things we will be discussing in our upcoming class. So what is a constructor? What is the use of a constructor? How to call this? These things we will discuss later, as I said. So right now, syntax of creating an object, class name, object name equals to new class name of done. Right. So this is how I will create an object. Now, the question is, where do I create an object? See, you can create the object anywhere inside the function, inside the main function, but generally, okay, generally, I'm talking about a general case scenario, but it is not always you should follow this. Generally, the object of a class is created within the main function. Within the main function or the main method. So this is in general. But other than this, you can create an object of a class even inside some other functions also. Right. Okay, now let me add this syntax here inside our main. There you go. Right. Now, we are going to be discussing about the next important thing that is required for us. Now, you already know about variables. We are already familiar with the concept of our variables. Right. We have discussed a lot about our variables. Now, what we want to discuss is what are the different types of variables we have in Java. You know what is a variable? A variable is a container that is used to store values. So store data temporarily. Okay, this is the concept of a variable. So the value can be changing. Value of a variable can change. Variable, as the name says. So values can keep on changing. So this is the base idea about our variables. And we already know what is the syntax for creating a variable. How do we create a variable? Remember, Access specifier. Again, we generally don't use access specifiers when it comes to variable, but when we go for real-time project, okay, when we go for real-time projects, there compulsory we have to give the access specifiers. Okay, now access specifier followed by the data type followed by the variable name. Then this is one way. This is one way of declaring. Yes. Otherwise, I can also declare this is one single variable. And then what you can do later on, you can say that variable name equals to, you can give some value like this. This is one way of using it. Yes. Otherwise, we can also declare multiple variables. So you can declare multiple variables at the same time. So there what we are going to go. You're going to say var1, comma, var2, comma, var3, comma, like this. It is going to go on till var_n. That is how much you want. So that way you're going to give. Now, when you're going to declare a variable like this, what is the thing? All these variables belong to the same data type, will have the same access specifier. Please remember, all the variable names you are giving here will be belonging to the same data type with the same access specifier. So this is another way of doing it. Or else, of course, you can do like this also. Creating the variable itself equals to, I can specify the value. So all these things we have already seen. We know these things about a variable. All right. Now, what I have to know is types. What are the different types of variables I have? In Java, what are the different types of variables that is supported? So I have 3 types of variables in Java. So please remember, how many types are there? There are 3 types. Now, what are the 3 types? You have something called as instance variables. Instance variables. We have something called as static variables. And of course, you have something called as local variables. So these are the 3 types of variables that is actually available in our Java programming language. So far, whatever variables you have been creating, all those are local variables. So far we have seen only one category, which is our local variables. Now the question comes is, what exactly is this local variable? What is this local variable? We have been creating it, but what is this? So local variables are nothing but variables that are created inside of a block. Inside of a block. So that block can be methods, that is nothing but functions. It can be constructor, but we have not come to that part. So, okay. So it can be a method, it can be a constructor. Okay, it can be any loops. Inside a loop, inside a for loop, we were creating variable. So again, a local variable. So it can be inside any if else statements, any decision making statements. Etc. So within a block, whatever variables you are going to be creating, that variables is what we call as a local variable. And block means all this. Block means all this. Right. Now, what is the speciality of this local variable? So local variables are certain points you have to remember. Scope of the variable. Scope of a variable. Scope means accessibility. That is, where can I make use of my variable? Inside the program, where can I use the variable? So where can I make use of the variable? That is what you call as an accessibility. So accessibility refers to the usage scope. Okay, so the accessibility or the scope of a local variable is only inside the block, only within the block in which they are created. So they can be used only inside the block in which you are creating it. If you try to use outside, if we try to access it outside of the scope, then you are going to be getting a compilation error. So what we'll end up? We'll end up with a compilation error. This is my local variables. So please remember, local variables means variables that are created inside a block and they can be used only inside that block in which you're creating it. If you try to use it outside, you are going to be getting a compilation error. Right. And talking about the lifetime, talking about the lifetime. So lifetime here means how long is my variable going to be alive? Now, what is the concept of it being alive or dead? So please remember, the concept of a variable being alive means how long is it going to be occupying that memory space. See, when I create a variable, it is going to occupy some memory space. So when is the memory space going to be taken back? Or when can it be taken back? Because see, every variable is occupying some memory. It has to be given back. Then only it can be reused for something else. Otherwise, the variable is going to keep on holding to that, which is not the right way of doing it. Okay, so every variable you have to create, it has to be destroyed also. So that part is taken care by my compiler. That is with the help of my JVM, it is going to take care of that work. Okay, so JVM is responsible for it. JVM, or what we call as my Java virtual machine, is responsible for what? Garbage collection. Garbage collection. What is this garbage collection? Is unwanted things. Memory. Taking back the memory is what we call as garbage collection. Once the resource is done, once it is made use of, so why should I still hold on to it? So that is why you're going to go for the concept of garbage collection. And this is taken care by my JVM. So programmer need not have to worry about this. So when it comes to a local variable, what is its lifetime? Or when is it eligible for garbage collection? So eligible for garbage collection. So when is a local variable eligible for garbage collection is once the control in the sense programs control. So once the program's control comes out of the block. Out of comes out after executing the block. So once this is done, then my variable is eligible for garbage collection. And who's going to do this garbage collection? My JVM is going to do. So for example, if I am going to create a variable inside a for loop. So let us say for example. So for example, I am creating a variable like this. I am saying for inside the for loop, I am saying int I is equal to 0. I less than or equal to 5. I plus plus. This is how I am writing my loop. So inside that I am saying system dot out dot println of I. I am printing the value of I. Now, this is my loop. So, what will happen? Please understand. When the loop starts at the beginning, so at the beginning of the loop, okay, at the beginning of the loop, that is first time when the loop is running. Variable I is created for us. So, variable I is created. Done. So, now what is the scope of this I? Scope of this I is only inside the for loop. Because I said, whenever you're creating a variable inside of a block, then it can be used only within that block. So I is a variable that I'm using inside this for. I'm creating inside the for. So within the opening and within the closing of this for block, only I can make use of this I. If I try to make it outside, so let us say here, I am saying like this. After the loop, okay, I am saying what is the I value? I'm printing it like this. So remember, this line is going to generate an error for me. This particular line is going to generate an error. Why? Because the scope of this I is only inside of the loop. So when I try to use it outside, so error is generated. So this is for the scope. Now talking about the lifetime, talking about the concept of lifetime. So as I said at the beginning, okay, at the beginning or the first time when this loop is beginning. So first time when the loop is running, okay, variable I is created. Then when the loop finishes its execution, variable I is ready for garbage collection. So no longer required, and it is ready for garbage collection. So I am saying here that it is ready for garbage collection. But when the garbage collection will be called, that is with my JVM. So please understand, I am saying it is eligible for garbage collection. So it will be there in the pool. Okay, but when it will be garbage collected is entirely up to my JVM. So my JVM will decide whenever it requires the memory, it will take it out. That's it. So this is how my local variable will be playing. And and there is one more very important rule. When it comes to local variable, there is one very important point that you have to follow. What is that point is, the local variables, any data type, okay, any data type, let it be, local variables must definitely be initialized, must be mandatorily compulsory, must be initialized before usage. This is 100% rule that needs to be followed. Now, just look at this. Here, I am creating a local variable. I am saying int x. Then I am saying system.out.println. I am just printing the value of x. See what happens here. See what it says. Variable might not have been initialized. So this is what I said. whenever you're going to create a local variable, it is compulsory, it is mandatory that you have to give the value for it before making use of it. Otherwise, your program will throw compilation error. Otherwise, your program is going to end up throwing compilation error if not given. Then you're going to be getting a compilation error. So this is another very, very important rule with regards to our local variable. So as I said, the three types of variables, what we have been using so far are our local variables. Why? Because what we do, we create a variable inside the main method. Then I will say, okay, enter the value of x. So enter a number. Then what you do? You use the scanner class. You use the scanner class and you get the value for this. Then I'm saying x is equal to yes dot. So next int of. This is how I have been doing. Now, see, where am I creating this x? Inside the main method. So this is a local variable. This is a local variable belonging to the main method. So belonging to the main function. So where can I use this variable? You can make use of this x within the main function. That is, within the opening and within the closing of the main function, you can make use of this x anywhere. You can make use of this x anywhere. Your choice. Your choice. So remember, this is a local variable. Okay, belonging to the main method. And where can I make use of it? You can make use of it inside the main function. So it can be used only within the main method. And when you try to use it outside of the main method, it is going to end up throwing errors. So that is the concept of our local variable. So now let us try to use it. So what we do? Yes. So I'm getting the value of it. Then I'm going to say system.out.println value of x is equal to. Then I am printing the x value. Right. Now let me run this. Asking me for the value of x. Let us say 25. Then it is printing. Yes, value of x is 25. Perfect. Program is working perfectly. Right. So now I'm going to do something. What is this? This is a block. Please remember, this is a block. Because as you know, anything that you write within an opening and closing brackets, curly braces, we call it as a block. Please remember, a block, what is the purpose of a block? It is to group statements together. I have different statements. I want to group the statements together. Hence, I'm having a block here. So, this is what we call as a nameless block. It is a nameless block. See, I'm not giving any name. When I created here, what did I say? This is my main block, because in the main function, I'm having this curly braces. So this is a main block. Now this is a nameless block. It is just for some block of statements to grouping that I am creating a block. But I have not given any name for it. When I talk about this one, this is a for block, because I'm having the for loop. After that, I'm writing the curly braces. So this is a for block. So like that, this is a nameless block. Inside this nameless block, see what I'm doing. I am saying system.out.println inside nameless block. I am printing this. Then I am saying value of x's. Value of x's. So where am I using this x? Inside another block. Is it allowed? Yes, it is allowed. Yes, it is allowed. Why? Because this block is present inside what? Inside main. This block what I have created, this nameless block, is also present within the main function only. So there is no harm in it. I told you the variable x is a local variable belonging to my main function. Belonging to my main function. Hence, I can make use of it inside the curly braces of my main. Opening and closing curly braces of my main. Anywhere I can make use of this x. So I am using this x inside this nameless block. Now see what I'm doing. I am saying x is equal to x plus 25. So what I'm doing, I am incrementing the value of x by 25. So the current value of x is something. Whatever is the current value plus 25 I am adding. Done. So now come out of the block. Come out of the block and then print the x value again. Print the x value again. So let us say main. And I am saying value of x is. So just to know that this is the main function. Okay, this is the main function code. Now see what I'm doing. See what I'm doing. I am creating another block. I am creating another nameless block. See, there is no rule. You can create any number of nameless blocks in your code. There is absolutely no rule at all. Let me call this as nameless block 1. And I am going to call this as nameless block 2. So, what is the value of x inside the nameless block? Please remember what will come. Updated value, local variable. Variable in the sense values can keep on changing. So, whatever is the last updated value of x, that is what is going to get printed here. That is what is going to be accessible by this block also. Now, what is the beauty of it is, inside this block, I'm going to create a variable. I'm going to be creating an integer variable. And I'm going to call this variable as y. And I'm assigning some value for y. I'm saying this is the value of y. So for x, I'm getting the value dynamically. For y, I'm initializing the value. Right. So now I'm going to print the value of y. So I'm saying system.out.println value of y. There you go. Print it. Okay, printing. Now, please remember, this is a local variable. Why I say it is a local variable? Because I have created it within a block. So, this is an integer variable, but local belonging to that block. So, local, but belonging to this particular block. So, what is the scope? Only inside of the block. Only inside of this block. What will happen if I try to use it outside? See what I'm doing? I'm again saying main. Okay, I am giving the value of x also. I am giving the value of y also. Again, outside in the main function. See what happens. See, this line is generating an error for me. So what it says, cannot find the symbol variable y. So this is going to generate an error. So what is the error says? Cannot find the symbol. So cannot find the symbol y. Why? Because it is a variable that is created inside of the block. So scope of that variable is only within this block. When you try to use it outside, it is going to end up throwing errors. Now let us run this piece of code. So it says enter a number. Okay. See what happens. Runtime exception. So error is stripe. It's not able to access the values. So please remember, that is why I said this is going to create an error. Suppose you comment this line. You comment this line and then run the program once again. Okay, let us give the same value. See, now there is no error. So the error was only because when you're trying to use the y variable outside of its scope. So now it is not generating any error for us. So this is the concept of my local variables. I hope every one of you have understood this concept. It's very, very important. Okay. And as I said, I will be sharing this document. I will be placing this document in your Google Drive. Along with the video, you can find this document also. You can go through it. Right. So I'm just saving it with the name, today's name. So whatever we are dealing with, everything will be there in the document. I will place it all in the Google Drive, same drive which is having the videos. So you can make use of this. Right. Now, this is the concept of my local variables. So I have discussed all the points regarding the local variables. Now, our focus is going to be on the second type of variable, that is my instance variable. Okay, what is my instance variable? Another very, very important concept. Now, here you have to understand something. The word instance means object. Please remember, the word instance always refers to our object. So instance variable means variables that belongs to the object. What do you mean by an instance variable? Instance variable means variables that belongs to an object. That is, every object, every object created for the class will have its own copy of the instance variables. Changes done to one variable will not affect the other. So, changes done to one object's variable will not affect the other object's data. Very, very important. Okay, so this is what we call as an instance variables. So objects belonging to variables belonging to an object. And I already said for a class you can have n number of variables, n number of objects. So each and every object will have its own copy of the instance variable. Now, where to create this instance variable or how to create this instance variable? Syntax is same. Syntax is absolutely same. How did we create a local variable? Same syntax for here also. Okay, what we did here, same syntax you are going to be following here also. So let me just copy this. You are going to be creating it like this, but there is one rule you have to follow. Instance variables are created outside of any block, but within the class, within the class. Please remember this point very carefully. Instance variable means you are going to be creating this variable outside of any block. That is not inside the main function, not inside any function. You cannot have it inside a loop or anything. It should be outside of any of the block, but within the class. Because everything is, should be there within the class only. So this is where we will be creating our instance variables. Okay, so created outside of any block, but within the class. And the second important point regarding my instance variable is in they have default values. They have what we call as default values. Now, what do you mean by this default value is when we are not initializing the variables. Default values are considered. So when we are not initializing the values, that is, for example, I am saying something like this, int x, but I have not given any value for x. If it is a local variable, if I am using it, system.out.println x, it will throw me an error. Okay, if I am saying something like this, if it is a local variable, it is an error, because for local variable compulsory you have to initialize the value. But for an instance variable, they have something called as default values. So they have something called as default value. So when will this default value take place? Whenever you are creating a variable but you are not initializing it with anything, their default values are considered by my compilers. Now, what are the default values that are available? Please remember, when it comes to integers, the default value is 0. When it comes to real numbers, the default value is 0.0. When it comes to characters, either a single character or a string group of characters, the default value is null. And when it comes to Boolean data type, the default value is false. So please remember, these are the default values what we are having. Okay, that is when you are going to create a variable but not initialize it with any values, then it is always going to be taking the default values. Right. Now, let us take an example of this. Let us consider an example of this. Let us go to back to our program. Remove all this. Now, what did I say? Variables that are created outside of any block but within the class. So here is where I'm going to create my instance variables. Instance variables. Now, this is outside of any block, that is my main is here. So definitely this is outside my main function, but inside the class. This is the opening of the class, this is the closing of the class. So it is going to be outside of any block, but within the class. So let us create it. So let us say int a. Then I am saying string b. Then let us say char c. Then boolean d. Let us say float e double f. There you go. I'm saying these are the variables I have. Okay, these are the variables of my class. So let me comment this. This is not needed now. So I'm just going to comment it. I'm just writing system dot out dot println A is equal to plus A. Okay. I have one more small problem. Okay. I'll complete this example after telling you about a function. Okay, because these are non-static variables, so I cannot access it from the main. Okay, let me say this. So this is about the instance variables, guys. So now let us combine both. You now know how to create an object. And I told you instance variable means they belong to the object. They belong to the object. So now what am I going to do is, for this class, I am going to be creating an object. Now, what is the syntax for it? So test, name of the object, I'm saying T1 is equal to new class name of, repeat it. Right, so what we have done, creating an object of the test class. Done. So we have created an object of the test class. Okay. Right. So now what am I going to do? I am saying so I'm just going to use all the variables. Okay. Now let me tell you one more point about the instance variable. How to use it. How to use an instance variable. I told you instance variable belongs to the object. So whenever you're going to make use of the instance variable, how you have to use? Object name dot variable name. Please remember, whenever you're going to make use of an instance variable, I'm not talking about the local, I'm talking only about the instance variable. Instance variable means they belong to your object. So how to access them or how to use them? Object name dot variable name. For giving the values also, equals to some value. For printing purpose also. So I'm going to say system.out.println. So I have to use the same variation. I have to be giving the value like this. Right. Now, coming back to our example. Now, these are my instance variable. This is the object of my class. Using that object, that means what? All these variables belong to this object T1. So using this object, I am accessing them. I am printing the value of those. But have I initialized any value? Have I assigned any value for them? No. But still I am printing them. And there is no error. When I'm using a normal variable, local variable, it throws me an error. It says variable was not initialized. But here, it is not throwing any errors. The reason is because of the default values. Since they contain default value, no error at all. Now let us run this. See what happens. Integer 0, string null. For char also it is 0. I mean, it is null, but that null is a non-printable character. That is why you are not getting anything printed. Okay, now for boolean, false. For float, for double, 0.0. These are the default values what I also told you. So this is a program which tells you about the default values. Right. So take this also as an example. So you like this even. See, I told you for any integers it is the same. So here what we are doing, we are printing the default values. Default values of the instance variable. See, I told you it is for the integers. So whether it is a byte, short, long, or int, it is going to be only 0. There you go. I have added that example also. Right. Now, let us initialize it with some value. And let me not have so much. Let us just have some 2 or 3 variables. So let us say int roll number. Then I am saying string name. And then let us say double average. So these are the 3 instance variables I'm having. Okay, these are the 3 instance variables that I'm going to be having. Then I am creating an object of that class. I am creating the object of the class. So T1 is my object. So now I have to initialize the value. That is, I have to assign the value for these variables. So again, how did I say you have to access? Remember the syntax, object name dot variable name. So what is my object name here? T1. So T1 dot roll number is equal to, let us say 101. Then T1 dot name is equal to, I am saying Sai. Then T1 dot. See, when you keep the dot itself, whatever is accessible by that object, it is giving me is equal to, let us say, 87.23 percentage. So these are all the values of which variable? Of T1 object. Of T1 object. Right. Now, if I want to print it, how to print it? Same way. Same way. So object name dot variable name. So I'm going to say student roll number is equal to, so plus what is the name of my object? T1. So T1 dot my variable. So then about the name and about the average. So let us say student name and student. There you go. I'm giving something like this. Now let us execute it. Let us try to execute the program. Run it. See what is the output you're getting. Sorry, I forgot to change name. And this is average. Now let us run it again. See, roll number, name, average. Done. Okay. This is an example of how to initialize the values and how to use my instance variable using the instance variable. How? This is an example. And this example, as I said, is for the default value. Default values of the instance variables. That is why we are using this example. Now, these are static inputs. That is, static input means what? I am assigning the value directly. But what I want the user to give the name. I want dynamic inputs. Dynamic inputs. So how I am going to do that? Scanner class. So dynamic inputs. So dynamic inputs of my instance variable. Of course, we are going to be using our scanner class. Now, for using the scanner class, what is the first step? Create an object of the scanner class. So that is the first step you're going to be doing. So scanner sc is equal to new scanner of system dot in. Done. Now, what are the datas I want to get? I want first the roll number. So enter the roll number. Now, I want to store this inside what? Inside this roll number. So, how I'm going to say T1 dot roll number is equal to SC dot next int of. See, I'm assigning the value of T1's variable. So, I'm going to say T1 dot roll number. Same way, T1 dot name. Next, T1 dot average. Double. Done. So just add the print statements for the data you're going to want to read. So get the name, get the roll number, and of course, get the marks. Done. So same thing, whether you're going to assign the value statically, that is direct initialization, or if you want to read the value dynamically, the syntax is same. How you are going to make use of it, the syntax is going to be exactly the same. Right, now run this. See what it says. Enter the roll number. Okay. Enter the student name. Done. Enter the average. Look at the result. So you can either get the value dynamically and store it, or you can get the value. You can directly initialize the value and store it. Those are your options. Those are entirely your options. Okay, so any value every time when you run dynamic input, what is the advantage? Every time when you run, you are going to be giving different inputs. See? Every time when you run, we can give different inputs. That is our dynamic inputs. Right. Now, let me share you this code also. There you go. This is an example. Yes. Now you know how to create an instance variable and how to access the instance variable. Now, let us go to the real-time scenario. I told you in my class there are 30 students. I want to maintain information about the 30 students. So I want the 30 students roll number, name and average. So each and every student record is one object for me. And I already told you, you can create n number of objects. So creating objects of the test class. So I am going to be creating multiple objects. So that is object 1, object 2, object 3. I am creating 3 different objects of my test class. So here, please remember, T1 is one student's record, T2 is another student's record, T3 is another student's record. So every object is an individual entity. Very, very important for us to remember. Every object is an individual entity for us. Right. Now, how to give the values? How to give the values? So please remember, every object, see what is the point I told you here? Every object created for a class will have its own copy of the instance variables. So here, according to our example, what is the class name? Class name is test. What are the variables I have? That is, what are the instance variables I have? Instance variables that are available for this particular class. What are they? I have roll number, I have name, and I have average. And how many objects I have created for this class? Objects of this class. Three objects are there, T1, T2, and T3. So 3 objects are present for me. So please remember, T1 will have separate roll number, name, and average. T2 will have separate name, roll number, average. T3 will have separate name, roll number, average. So every object will have its own copy of the roll number, name, and average. That is, any instance variable you're creating inside a class. Every object will have its own copy of the instance variables. So for T1, separate copy of these variables will be created. So if I want to access T1's data, I will say T1 dot roll number, T1 dot name, T1 dot average. But when I want to access the second student's record, I will say T2. When I want to access the third student's record, I will say T3. So this is how the instance variables will be done. So every object of that class will have its own copy. So whatever changes I do to one data, suppose average of one student, I am modifying, that will not affect the average of the others. This is the core concept of my instance variable and my objects. That is what we are going to be doing here. So I am going to be getting the dynamic inputs. This is for T1. For T2. Okay, see what I'm doing for T2. Okay, let us say for T2, I'm initializing the values. So how am I saying? T2 dot, T2 dot. Now see, same roll number, name, and average is showing for me. So roll number is equal to, so T2 dot name is equal to, so give any name. Then let us say T2 dot average. Done. So for T1, I am taking dynamic inputs. For T2, I am initializing the values. Okay, T3, your choice. You can do anything you want. Right, because these are the two ways of giving the variables values. So I have done that. So T3, let us also initialize it. One dynamic input and two values I'm initializing. So make sure T3 For the third student record you're giving. Right, now I have to print the values. So I have to print the values. I'm saying student information 1. Right, all these are T1's data. Now let us say again. See, again, as I told you, object name. So T2 dot. So it will give all the data belonging to that object only. Again, for T3. For the third object, information 3, student 3. So T3 dot roll number, T3 dot name, and T3 dot average. So this is the classic example here for an object. So every object, why we create? We want to maintain individual records. So now when I run this, see, it is asking for the first object value. Okay, I am saying Arun. Oh, sorry, roll number. Let us say 101. Name Arun. Okay, and average, let me say 95, 98%. Now look here. This is only the record of Arun. This is the record of Daya. And this is the record of Geeta. So every record, every object maintains individual values. Right. Now let us try to modify. Let us try to modify. So I'm going to modify the value. So which value I'm modifying? See here, I am saying T2 dot average is equal to, what is the average of T2 here? What we have? We are having 65.45. I am increasing. I am saying 97.25. Now I am going to print it. See what I'm saying? Modified average is equal to which thing I did? T2. So T2 dot average. Now let us run it again. Let us run it again. Let me give the same input. See what happens. So student information 2. What was the average here? 65.45. Now what is the average here? So that is what I said. One object's value, whatever you modify, will not affect the others. Others are coming the same. So that is my instance variables. How my instance variable will be working. Right. Now let me also add this code to your document. So guys,